Hello, welcome to everybody to this webinar, Active Folate versus Folic Acid, the big debate around folate, and we are going to discover also Quatrefolic. The speaker will be me, that I'm Silvia Pisoni, Senior Market Manager at Gnosis by Lesaffre, and also responsible of Women Health and Reproduction segment, and Luca Tiano. Professor Luca Tiano is a PhD in biochemistry and is Professor of Nutrigenetic and Nutrigenomic at the Polytechnic University of Marche in Italy. The first things we are talking about is the folate market. Folate is an important and essential vitamin. Is a water-soluble B vitamin that is often and naturally present in some kind of food, and is also added and available as a dietary supplement. Folate is very important because it plays an essential role in cell division and DNA synthesis and is involved in different aspects of human growth. Humans need to maintain an adequate dietary intake of folate during the different stages of their life, for sure in pregnancy and lactation, but also is very important for infant and children, for adult and elderly period, and in a lot of other conditions. Folate is also a real trendy vitamin for different applications for women. The first big market of folate is pregnancy. Folate is the vitamin of women. Women's health supplement will top 7 billion in 2023 for the first time, and it will settle in a 4% growth, taking in consideration also the negative impact of COVID. At ingredient level, if we are going to consider women, women appears to be focusing on basic need. In 2020, the fastest growing category for women is the vitamin, and in this kind of vitamin, of course, we have vitamin B that will take the market share of 21% with a growth of 12%. In the picture, you can see some finished product with Quatrefolic focused on pregnancy and infertility. It's not only women, but folate are very important for mood and brain, for cardiovascular protection and sport, and of course for sexual health. Sexual health is one of the most performing sub-segments, with 1 billion that will be reached in 2023, where people are looking more keenly for the what's next. So it's a market segment where it's very important to put innovation and to provide innovative solutions. Another big target for folate is postmenopausal women. That is a trendy market too, where aged women want to be youthful, happy, and active, and the nutritional approach is the main one. Why folate market is so appealing? The major factor driving the growth of folate market are the demand, the increase of demand of dietary supplement, and the use of folate in a lot of different kind of applications. The market dimension of folate in nutritional supplement will take in consideration the old folic acid, but also the new reduced folate. The global folate market size is around 78 million with a growth rate of 10%. The reduced folate market size is 52 million, that is equal to 5,800 kilograms, but if we consider folic acid, the market size is 26 million, that is equal to more than 130 tons. What does it mean? It means that folic acid is the non-active folate, is the old kind of folate, and the market is switching it into reduced folate, that is the active form. The North America account the 59% of the market share of reduced folate. Europe plus North America, the market dynamic still show an active switch from folic acid to reduced folate, and this switch is also started in emerging countries, like, for example, Asia Pacific. Quatrefolic is the opportunity to offer an innovative solution to answer to this market need. The market trend, so this switch from folic acid to reduced folate, is following a real need. This is because not all the people have the right level of folate just using folic acid, because folic acid is not active as it, and before it can be utilized by the body, it must be converted into reduced folate. The ability of transform folic acid into reduced folate could be not so efficient in all the people, so not the 100% of people is able to use folic acid. The importance of the methyltetrahydrofolate reductase polymorphism that is the responsible of the transformation of folic acid into active folate is a real important scientific argument. And if we just check on PubMed, we can find more than 5,000 publications on this topic in the last 5 years. For women, especially, this deficiency can cause some important health issues. If we consider the different form of folate, we have to remember that folate in food is often not enough, because folate contains in food are unstable, and the food can lose its amount of folate really fast. The bioavailability range of folate in food is around 25–50%. The storage at room temperature may lose up to 70% of the folate activity in 3 days, but first of all, cooking process in water can increase the loss to 95%. And a lot of food rich in folate are food that you use to cook, so you lose to waste a high amount of folate. Folate deficiency reasons are, first of all, the dietary intake that is low and is not enough, especially not enough to cover body needs. Increased need is not watched by an increase of intake, enzyme defect involved into the metabolization, malabsorption, and some kind of drug interaction. The different forms of folate are folate, so the one you can find in food, but it must be hydrolyzed. It is absolutely unstable. The folic acid that was first synthesized in 1945 is more stable than natural form of folate, but is not active, and it needs to be metabolized, and is the one that is commonly added into supplements. Then we have the 5-methyltetrahydrofolate, that is the biological form of folate, and is the form of folate we more often find, for example, in the maternal serum and umbilical cord serum. What does it mean? It means that the 5-methyltetrahydrofolate is the main folate form in cord blood, the 89% of the total folate, and 2 times higher in the maternal serum. 5-methyltetrahydrofolate is the only biological form of folate. We evaluate the concentration and percentage of different folate forms in maternal serum and umbilical cord, and we discover that 5-methyltetrahydrofolate is the main folate form in cord blood, means 90% of the total folate. So the folic acid that is found most commonly in vitamin, supplement, and fortified food is not folate. It must be converted from folic acid to methyltetrahydrofolate, that is the active form of folate that can be used by the body. Quatrefolic is the active form of folate readily available for transport and use in human body and tissue. Now I leave the stage to Professor Tiano, that will talk about the methyltetrahydrofolate polymorphism and give a quatrefolic overview.
Okay, thank you, Silvia. I will now briefly present subject-specific differences in the metabolization and use of folate. Folate, together with other B-complex vitamins, are essential for the maintenance of cellular functions and health. In particular, folate plays a key role as a donor of methyl moieties to endogenous biomolecules. Doing so, folate is essential to the biosynthesis of vital elements such as DNA, proteins, and neurotransmitters. Alteration in this pathway leads to cellular impairment associated with increased risk of cancer, cardiovascular disease, critical organ failure associated with different degenerative diseases. The active form of folate involved in the methylation cycle is methyl tetrahydrofolate. This is the final step of transformation of dietary folates, and this implies that its concentration, its status in the living organism, depends not simply on the dietary allowance, but also on the efficacy of different converting enzymes. These enzymes are not identical in each one of us. On the contrary, they might bear slight differences among subjects that are also known as gene variants or polymorphisms. What does actually mean a polymorphism? A polymorphism is a variant in the DNA sequence that characterizes each single individual. So to what extent DNA varies in humans? How frequent are these variants? On one hand, we might think DNA is very conserved if we consider that 99% of our DNA sequences are identical to those of higher primates like chimpanzees, monkeys. On the other hand, even subtle variation may have macroscopic effect if we think that just an extra 0.5% variation differentiate human DNA from close primates, and the same percentage is responsible for the huge variability that characterizes human beings. Considering that the DNA is composed by 3 billion elements, the nucleotides, this means that approximately 15 million nucleotides differentiate each single individual. Nucleotides come in 4 types, and their sequence constitute the genetic code, just like musical notes compose a melody. In our DNA is written our personal melody of life that is pretty similar for each one of us, with the exception of scattered single notes. As we say, 0.5% of all notes. That represents variants. These variations may sound like personal glimpse of interpretation and actually sound better than the original script. Or they may be clearly out of tune, making our love melody not so good at times. Getting back to our topic, to today's topic, we say that folate do not come in our diet ready to use, but they need to be processed by the organism. The gene encoding for methyl tetrahydrofolate reductase, the enzyme necessary for metabolization and activation of folate and folic acid, might be present in 2 common variants, which are C677T and A129C, where the denomination indicates the position and the substitution of the nucleotide on the gene. Different combination of these 2 variants results in the expression of low functionality enzymes, with activities as low as 25% compared to the wild-type form. These variants are very frequent, meaning that less than half of the people have a standard full functional version of the gene, while about 60% of people have at least 1 copy of the low-functioning variant. So, going back to our musical example, the carriers of these variants in their life melody will have some notes representative for MTHFR genes slightly out of tune. More specifically, alteration of 1 nucleotide, cytosine for thymine and adenine for cytosine, in these 2 common variants result in the alteration of the codon triplet and leads to amino-acidic substitution in the protein. The presence of an altered amino acid results in a still functional but less active protein. In fact, if a single copy of the gene is altered, so we have a heterozygous CT variant, its activity is decreased by 30%, while in homozygosity, TT variant, the activity is decreased by 70%. Combining the different possibilities, we could have up to 9 patterns of expression with increased risk of cardiovascular risk, gestational and neurological issues. Variants at high risk, originally studied in the U.S. population, highlighted a higher proportion in Hispanic and Caucasians compared to Afro-Americans. However, further studies were conducted in different cohorts across the world, highlighting a significant prevalence in many other ethnic groups, and in particular in Italy, in China, in Korea, and in Mexico, with a prevalence between 30 and 40% or even more. In any case, the prevalence is rather high globally, and we are talking only of 1 variant. So considering the pattern resulting from different variants, the situation could get only worse. The use of 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate present in Quatrefolic avoid any limitations associated with less active genes variants of the enzymes required for folate activation, not only MTHFR, but also dehydrofolate reductase. This enzyme is located upstream in the conversion pathway and is responsible for the transformation of folic acid, the most common synthetic form for integration of folate, present in supplements and fortified food. Since the overdosage of folic acid and or the suboptimal transformation leads to the accumulation of unmetabolized folic acid that has been shown to be associated with relevant health concern, the use of 5-methyl folate completely bypass also this issue regarding of the genetic background of the receiver. Quatrefolic is structurally analogous to the reduced and active form of folate and does not need any further processing. In conclusion, folate deficiency is one of the most common vitamin deficiencies, and simply eating folate-rich food may not provide the recommended daily dosage for several reasons, including altered absorption, disease state, and interference with drugs. In between these well-known factors, deficiencies associated to specific genetic background represent a growing area of research, attracting a lot of interest in the scientific community for its relevant epidemiological size and broad negative consequence for human health. We covered the general introduction on MTHFR gene variants and advantage of the use of Quatrefolic. And in the next few slides, I will present some highlights on the product and its use. Quatrefolic is the glucosamine salt of 5-methyl tetrahydrofolate, and as such represents the last generation of folate and embeds several innovative advantages over traditional folic acid supplementation. As we mentioned, is a natural product bioidentical to the essential form in which folates occur in the human body. In this form, it does not need further processing, is already active, already available, and is able to go across the blood-brain barrier. Moreover, in the form of glucosamine salt, its solubility is greatly increased, being 100 times greater, and consequently, its bioavailability is greatly enhanced. As shown in this acute bioavailability test, measuring plasma levels for 8 hours, Cmax, the maximum concentration in the plasma of the glucosamine salt, is remarkably higher than folic acid, as well as methyl tetrahydrofolate given as calcium salt. Following its broad spectrum of activity, being involved in very basic and essential biosynthetic processes, application areas are very heterogeneous, ranging from cardiovascular condition, neurological and mood disorders, fertility and gestational issues. Wider aspects of pregnancy surely represent a major application area. We mentioned that folates are critical for biosynthesis of cellular components through one-carbon metabolism. DNA synthesis is certainly required for the first phases of fetal development to ensure chromosome stability and proper gene expression. Moreover, impairment of one-carbon metabolism promotes hyperhomocysteinemia, which is a risk factor for embryo loss. Indeed, deficiency of folate is known to be causally related to neural tube defects and other fetus developmental issues. As a direct consequence, folate requirement increase massively during pregnancy. But even before pregnancy, folate levels are directly associated with fertility rate, both in men and women, raising again the issue of low activity of MTHFR polymorphism associated also to fertility issues. In men, low level of folate are associated with poor sperm count and spermatic DNA instability. In women, it can affect epigenetic factors associated with oocyte maturation, but is also related to several gynecological conditions that beyond fertility issue represent also a serious health risk factor. Taken together, these aspects highlight that folates are a critical component for women's health. In this respect, Quatrefolic has been tested in a clinical trial involving 33 couples with at least one partner with MTHF polymorphism with an history of infertility, premature fetal loss, and miscarriages. These couples had previously used high doses of folic acid, 5 milligrams per day, without success. When the couples were given Quatrefolic, 800 micrograms per day, the pregnancy rate increased to 87%, either spontaneously or maximizing the effect of EVF-ET. Another area of intervention worth mentioning is the cardiovascular health. In relation to the involvement of folates in recycling homocysteine, which is a byproduct of methionine metabolism that may have negative impact on health when present at high levels. In particular, plasma levels should be less than 10 micromoles per liter. When hyperhomocysteinemic subjects were given either 5 milligrams of folic acid or 400 micrograms of methyl tetrahydrofolate, both in associations with a B-complex vitamin, this led to a significant reduction of homocysteine plasma levels that was more pronounced in subjects on Quatrefolic, where 56% of the recorded measures were below the safety level. So I concluded, and I hope I gave you a clear overview, and now I pass the communication to Silvia for some final technical communication. Thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you very much, Luca. Just a short conclusion to highlight that Quatrefolic is a patented active ingredient with a patented in US and Europe. It is in compliance with GRAS, is a novel food in Europe, and is also ANVISA and TGA approved. It is produced into a European manufacturing site, FDA inspected, and GMP. The trademark of Quatrefolic is proprietary of Gnosis by Lesaffre and is registered worldwide in US, Europe, but also a lot of other countries. And we have also a strong brand support with the Quatrefolic website, but also with different social like Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. So thank you very much to be with us. Now we can go ahead with the question and answer you will ask us.
Okay, we have one question, which is, in your opinion, which are the patients suitable for Quatrefolic? So Quatrefolic can be given from preconception till the first trimester of pregnancy. It can be used to decrease the risk of hyperhomocysteinemia and reduce the risk of complications. A second question is, what is the clinical significance of increased levels of unmetabolized folic acid? Well, several studies have reported an increase in serum of unmetabolized folic acid levels since the implementation of folic acid fortification. And this raised possible concerns about its potential overdosing and adverse effects, as we say. Recent studies have confirmed that unmetabolized folic acid is associated with a reduction of natural killer cytotoxicity, which reduces the immune system capacity to kill off malignant and pre-malignant cells. Another question regarding unmetabolized folic acid. There is a risk of unmetabolized folic acid with Quatrefolic, where several studies have reported an increase in serum of unmetabolized folic acid levels since the implementation of folic acid fortification, as we said, with possible concern over its potential overdosing and adverse effect. There is a variability in the presence of unmetabolized folic acid in the population, suggesting that it might be accumulated in the blood as a consequence of different conditions that we described, such as impairment and or slackness of the folic acid reduction pathway, And the overdosing, of course, effect due to uncontrolled folic acid intake, especially in countries where fortification strategies have been implemented. Quatrefolic provides a metabolic reduced folate form utilized and stored in the human body. The 6S5-methyltetrahydrofolate, it does not aid to the potential accumulation of the unmetabolized folic acid in the blood, which has no biological function and whose effects are not yet known. Also due to the potential uncontrolled assumption of folic acid in the diet. And finally, a question on the mechanism of action of Quatrefolic. What is the mechanism of action? Its mechanism of action is related to the action of methyltetrahydrofolate, which is the active part of the proprietary ingredient. 5-methyltetrahydrofolate derives from tetrahydrofolic acid through a series of metabolic reactions. Tetrahydrofolic acid acts as a coenzyme in several vital metabolic reactions, participating in the transfer as acceptor and donors of various one-carbon fragments. These are involved in the biosynthesis of nucleotides, purines, and pyrimidines, and in metabolism of several important amino acids. In concert with vitamin B12, folate coenzymes allow the conversion of the amino acid homocysteine into methionine. The lack of this conversion has been associated with various pathologies and disease states. And finally, another question, why folate is important for cardiovascular health? Quatrefolic, the 5-methyltetrahydrofolate glucosamine salt, is the active folate that well supports cardiovascular health. Folate is an important regulator of homocysteine metabolism and helps to maintain its normal plasma concentration. Folate deficiency is frequently associated with elevated plasma homocysteine concentration, a condition that, as we described, is known as hyperhomocysteinemia, that is considered a recognized risk factor for cardiovascular disease and may also be associated with hypertension.
Okay, we have just one last question. In your opinion, how you classify the different generation of folate? So if we are going to consider the different kind of folate, of course, the fourth generation is the food folate. That is the kind of folate we can naturally find into foods. Then we have a second generation folic acid, that is a synthetic one. Then the third generation, that is the calcium salt of 5-methyltetrahydrofolate. And then with Quatrefolic, we reach the fourth generation folate because we increase the stability and solubility of the 5-methyltetrahydrofolate, and that means that we improve bioavailability with a well-established safety. We have no more questions, so thank you for your attention, and see you soon when we are going to talk about folate. Thank you very much.